And we're back for the second quarter of the Paddock, the Goals. We're absolutely thrilled to have not just one, but two community powerhouses with us in our second quarter today. Incredible guests who are absolute authorities when it comes to the vital role of social inclusion in recovering from natural disasters. We all remember well the devastating 2010-2011 floods in Charlton. Well, in the midst of that crisis, a remarkable hub emerged, a beacon of hope for that community called the Circle. This incredible centre became not just a place for emergency aid, but a space where the community could gather, find emotional support, and start the long journey toward rebuilding their lives and their town. We have one of the key architects behind the Circle with us today, and it's welcome to someone who's navy blue in more ways than one. Kayleen Cossa, welcome.
Hi, Travis. Thank you.
And we're also really pleased to have the CEO of the Birchup Cropping Group. She's about to become a two-timer on the Paddock the Goals. Fiona Best is with us again today. Her organisation has been a game changer in Australian agriculture in this region. They've been pushing the boundaries of research, paving the way for sustainable farming and ensuring that local farmers are armed with the knowledge and tools they need to thrive. Welcome back to the pod, Fiona.
Thanks, Travis. Great to be back.
Kayleen, considering the new pop-up organisations and groups often emerging in the aftermath of natural disasters, what contributed to the relevance of the Circle and what was your experience?
Okay, thanks, Travis. Well, in 2011, Charlton was the only community or major community within the Paddock Shire that wasn't actually supported by a funded neighbourhood house. And with 80% of the community impacted and the other 20% trying to assist, it quickly became evident that we're going to need to form some official organisation that could actually work with local and state government to help Charlton recover. So a small group of people formed together and we basically arranged a community-funded neighbourhood house called the Circle. In my experience, it was a wonderful example of community-led recovery and response, working with state and local organisations and governments. And so the Circle operated for a couple of years with its purpose to support Charlton get back on its feet and return to business as normal. And once that happened, it then folded. But it did become the catalyst for the funding application for a government-funded neighbourhood house in 2018.
And Fiona, with the Royal Commission into Natural Disasters in Victoria recommending that authorities should take a step back and allow communities to drive their own change, how is the Birchup Cropping Group adapting its strategies to empower local farmers and communities? And additionally, given the decline in volunteers noted in recent census data, how are you tackling the challenge of community engagement in that ageing population?
Oh, look, Travis, I guess I want to start by saying, the BCG remit has always been to provide farmers across the region with access to the latest information generated from local research. And I guess that's how we're empowering our farming communities to, make decisions informed by science-backed data. And I think that's been absolutely fundamental in positioning our farming community to be able to withstand the challenges that are posed regularly on the agricultural sector from largely weather conditions, whether it be really flooding conditions or drought conditions. And I guess bringing, researchers and industry together through events and activities, it helps people, provides people the opportunity to share ideas and build networks that they can utilise. In terms of the ageing population, the farming community is an ageing population, but what we are finding in, across the Paddock Shire is that because we are, managing our risks so much better in agriculture, we're actually attracting the next generation of farmers back to the community. So that's a really exciting element, and it's absolutely part of BCG's strategy to empower the next generation of farmers.
And Kayleen, if I can just retweak that question a bit to you in relation to the Royal Commission, the recommendations emphasise the importance of community-led initiatives in the wake of natural disasters rather than that top-down approach. This philosophy certainly influenced the design and function of the Circle. However, in the aftermath of the 2010-2011 floods, the community called for more council support. Considering the census shows a decline in the number of volunteers amongst an ageing population, how do we maintain more active community involvement, especially when our community is still experiencing fatigue? what needs to be considered as part of rescoping of Council's 2030 plan for Charlton, do you think?
Great question, Travis. If you don't mind, I might just break that one down into a few parts just so we can simplify it. Whether it's a natural disaster, betterment of rural roads, or childcare advocacy, I think the 10 communities within Bullock Shire really always seek council support and rely on it very heavily because as community volunteers, we can't fight for any of these causes in isolation. In the floods of September and December 2010 and then the January 2011 major flooding event, there was a lot, let's be honest, there was a lot of tension between the Charlton community and Bullock Council at the time as there appeared to be a very little hands-on support in the initial response to the flood. That noted, obviously it was an unusual event that no one had experienced before, so it was hard to know what to do and how to best go about it. But I want to say, following the recommendations, I think the Bullock Shire Council have really taken the recommendations on strongly. I'm really glad to report that with the latest flooding event, there was a significant increase in pre-planned support from both local and state government and a major improvement in the lines of communication with local government and the local communities. They also, I'm not quite sure if it was state or local led, but there was also a direct point of contact between the state government ministerial officers and the Charlton community via the neighbourhood house, which allowed the local staff members of the council to go about the response and recovery that was required, but it allowed the community to have a direct line into state government, which was both pre and post event. So we were contacted prior to the event and they asked what our needs might be if we were impacted. And that support continued. So I think all of the recommendations coming out of the Royal Commission really have a great deal of validity that need to be worked on. In regards to the ageing population, and Fiona, I'd like to say that, you can see I'm sitting in the paddock here at the moment and we're hoping to have the next generation come home soon. Things like the Birchip Cropping Group encouraging the next generation to come back to the rural lifestyle is really invaluable. But so Charlton still has one of the highest levels of volunteering in Australia. But yes, volunteer fatigue is very real. But I also want to mention that staff fatigue is too. So things like the ability of Bullock Shire Council, the neighbourhood houses, health services, etc., all of those that provided support during and after the disaster and emergency events, whether it be floods, fires or COVID, it's really hard to return to business as normal when you're highly compromised post-events. And so finally, Travis, the last thing you asked what I'd like to see as part of Council's 2030 plan. And as part of the rescoping, I probably would like to see Council commence with some flood response, recovery and mitigation discussions with the local community so we can continue that step forward of improvement. And I think it's really important that Council embraces that philosophy that community-led recovery acknowledges and supports the resources, capacity, resilience and leadership already present within individuals and the communities. And we start working towards building stronger partnerships between communities and those involved in recovery processes, as neither councils or the communities can do it alone, really. Hopefully that covers all those questions there, Travis.
It does, and it's a great point. And I think, climate change and what we've seen on the ground in the last 13 or 14 years here in Bullock Shire means that municipal emergency management planning will feed directly into council planning, and it needs to because that's our reality. We've got vulnerable communities and we've got a massive road network that is at the mercy of riverine flood and then the flow and effects from that. So it absolutely stands to reason. Fiona, as we approach harvest, again, it seems to have come around really quickly and start planning for the next season. Could you share some key considerations or strategies that farmers should be focusing on given the, fatigue levels and they're still quite high, those levels, and to be able to set themselves up for a strong start to the upcoming growing season?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's still a lot going on in the current season, but in terms of preparing for harvest, I think the key things that we talk about with all our farmers is making sure that everybody is as prepared as they can be. So it's making sure that machinery is serviced and fit for purpose and trying to schedule all of that to happen now rather than right on the cusp of harvest. and making sure that, things are ultimately ready to go. Easier said than done, but making sure that you've got the workforce and the labour that's required to undertake harvest. We know that harvest is a really hectic time, so you need to have people on the ground to support all the elements that are going on. So I think making sure recruitment and anything like that you need to do for your business is happening right now. The other thing that we sort of talk about with our farmers is, before the hectic nature of harvest hits, making sure that everybody who you have, all the labour units that you've got involved in the harvest process are really trained in all the things that they're going to be asked and expected to do during harvest. So, and do that, again, not in the stress of harvest when you've started, but all come together as a unit to say, righto, here's how we're managing harvest this year. Here's who's going to do what. This is how we do things on our farm. This is what it looks like. If this happens, this is what you do. You do all of that pre-harvest planning well before harvest, so that everybody in the business has got an opportunity to ask questions or to follow up or to chase things up around how you're going to go about doing things during harvest. And the other thing is making sure that you are actually looking after everybody in that farming unit. So from a mental health perspective, making sure that people are not working absolutely long hours. Of course, there are going to be some hours that are longer than others, but trying to manage fatigue during harvest is absolutely paramount, because we know accidents happen when people are really tired. And farmers are notorious for probably pushing the boundaries at times. Just to be acutely aware that you need to be looking after yourself and looking after others in the team. Even eating healthily. I was talking to a farmer at footy the other day, and he was saying how harvest time can be just a really unhealthy time for them in terms of what they're eating and things like that, and they're not necessarily doing a heap of physical exercise depending on what job they have at harvest. So I think even just simple things about thinking about what you're going to eat in harvest, it might seem silly, but it can really have a big impact on how the harvest operation goes.
Some nuggets there. Thank you, Fiona. Kayleen, given all floods are unique experiences and the focus this time around has been more Shire-wide rather than mainly focused on Charlton, as it was a bit over a decade ago, which traditionally had been the hardest hit. How would you navigate the balance of respecting historical experiences while ensuring that biases from past events don't dictate or limit the community's current and future needs, especially considering external triggers like our current rising cost of living, lack of affordable housing, making coping even more challenging for our communities?
Yeah, great question again, Travis. Certainly challenging times ahead for all of us, I think. And a bit similar to what Fiona was saying about preparing for harvest and having a bit of a planning strategy. I think that the best thing that we can do in terms of planning for, if there is any future events, is to be really mindful that it's not just when we talk about townships or communities impacted, that we're not physically just talking about the houses in town. Like in 2011, Charlton was one of 3 towns impacted, but a large majority of the agricultural lands in Bullock were heavily impacted by the floodwaters. And that's really important to note again this time round. Whilst Charlton was only we got lucky. We had a few houses and a handful of businesses impacted by the water events this time round, but the district farmers actually were the ones that proposed to council of cutting of the roads and saving the township, and they did that because we didn't want to see the town impacted like it was back in 2011. But as a result of that, the floodwaters then came into rural areas, and farmers' livelihoods were heavily impacted by that. And as a result of that, that impacts incredibly negatively on our communities, which are obviously very heavy reliant on agricultural income. So when we're talking about, the floods from last year, I think it's really important that we remember that Charlton was impacted. Whilst it wasn't the township, it was actually the Charlton community, and those financial hardships will be factored into our recovery for a while to come yet. And I think that needs to be part of the process of moving forward with our recovery processes and the consideration into the mitigation planning. The cost of living and affordable housing, they're not just impacting our community. We've got a severe shortage of housing, which then has a flow-on effect to a shortage of employment opportunities. We've got positions available in lots of organisations and government departments in this area but can't fill them due to housing shortage. I don't think that's something that we can solve in isolation alone in Bullock, but I think that there's a much wider scope here for the role of community voice that needs to be heard in not only these issues, but all of the challenges that we're about to face. And I personally would like to think that these can be best addressed by designing some form of an inclusive communication plan with not only our local government, but state and federal government too, where the community needs and concerns are met with genuine empathy and concern. So, Travis, you being the communication god, have you got anything like that up your sleeve?
Well, we're always looking for ways to work that through. We are working on some communication solutions at Council as part of our flood recovery model that we'll look to start to push out into the community over coming times. But yeah, we're a bit like everyone. We want to streamline our engagement processes and make sure that we're able to communicate quickly and how people want to be communicated with. And we're always working on that. It's never a complete solution and it's never solved because our demographic changes and the way people want to receive and be communicated with and engaged with is constantly changing as well. We've got a myriad of things to juggle as part of that as well, with coverage of or connection of internet in our houses being, the amount of houses that don't have internet in Bullock Shire Council's twice the state average. We've got a median age of 51, so all those bring more constraints as well.
Yeah.
Fiona, considering the unique agricultural challenges and opportunities in the Wimmera Mallee area, could you share some of the upcoming projects and initiatives that BCG has in the pipeline to specifically address the needs and aspirations of the region?
Yeah, absolutely. Trav, we've got so many projects on the go, which is exciting. So I'll just highlight a couple, and something that relates to something I highlighted earlier, which was the next generation of farmers. I mean, BCG have established a young farmer network across the region with up to 7 groups established. And so we're really excited about supporting that initiative, and that's something that the BCG board feel very passionately about. So we're very keen to underwrite that initiative outside of any external funding that we receive. So I think that's excellent. And so, yeah, if there's any young farmers out there who are keen to be part of a discussion group that come together regularly, please reach out to the BCG and we'll put you in touch, with others and within a coordinated group. We've just recently started a long-term farming systems trial just north of Birchip, which will run for 5 years. I think this is, a real game changer in terms of understanding, a whole range of dynamics that underpin the farming systems that we've got in place. It's sort of almost nuancing just a few of the things that we're already doing so well, but I think that will be a real focal point for discussion moving forward, and the fact that we've got it in place for 5 years is fantastic.
Keep up the great work in advocating for all of that. Now, just as importantly today, Fiona, you're kitting up in the hockey grand final.
I am. I know. I'm really excited about it. The coach, Stephanie Coffey, she convinced me at the start of the year to make a return. And I must admit, I was a reluctant starter. But we're up against Charlton, who are a formidable team and have been undefeated all year. So anyway, we'll just be giving it our best shot.
Good stuff. And Kayleen, what does North Central Grand Final Day have in store for you?
Well, obviously, I'm sorry, Fiona, but very strongly barracking for the women's hockey and hope that Charlton can bring home the silverware in both that and the under-12 hockey. So there are only 2 clubs represented, so barracking for them. But in terms of the senior footy, looking for a really high-standard, close game. I think that's what brings out the best of the North Central supporters.
Thank you both for your time today on the Paddock the Goals, and enjoy Grand Final Day in Boort.
Thanks Travis.